For this build, I'm going to use this half of a leaf spring here. This is scrapped off of a other project that I was working on a few years ago that just didn't pan out. It, happens sometimes. So my basic plan is I'm going to thin it out as well as narrow it. And I'm not 100% certain the shape I'm going to go for, but I'll probably have the blade get a little narrower as it goes down. If not, it'll be quite drastic. Just kind of depends on what I'm going to do. And then I forge the end of it into the tang. I always forge distal taper, of course, which to those who don't know, it means the blade itself gets thinner as it goes down, which is how you see the swords that have the balance that's pretty close to the handle without being super heavy. It just helps with the sword and makes it a little better. But yeah, let's get started. I really need to find something else to say here. I've been saying the same thing over and over again for like the past 3 videos. Now that I have my general shape forged, I'm going to take my angle grinder, kind of clean up the tang, make it a little less weird looking, and then start grinding in all my edges. I don't know yet if I'm going to have the edge go all the way up to the center, or whether I'm going to have like just a flat spot running down it or some sort of fuller. I don't know yet. I'll probably start grinding and decide that later. Now that I have the base grinding and sanding done, I still have a little bit left to finish, just to, finish everything up, put an actual edge on it and all that. But I want to make my handle first before I do that, because I don't want this thing to be sharp while I'm making the handle. I've cut myself many times having that problem. But I'm gonna make the I'm gonna make the guard out of this railroad spike. No particular reason why I chose a railroad spike. I just have a ton of these lying around, and they're close to the size I need. The pommel is going to be a ring pommel because this is supposed to be kind of an Irish style sword. I have this piece of the round stock. I don't know the specific. I think what it's called. It's pretty thick and it's about the size I need. I just took this off the floor of my dad's welding shop, so just a piece of scrap. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go to the forge and start making this. Start making a sword guard, I guess. Blade, ready for normalizing and heat treating. I don't know how much people know about heat treating. When I started out, I didn't really know much, but normalizing it basically relaxes all the atoms in the steel, make sure everything's homogeneous and not weird chunks of this and that. So it makes it a little bit more uniform throughout the whole thing. Anyway, but while I'm doing that is when I make the handle, because I'm going to take this chunk of oak, cut probably a square or pretty square piece out, drill a hole through it, and then I heat up my tang to where it's, glowing, and then I put that through the hole to burn a perfectly shaped slot in it that fits the tang. And I find it's the best, it's the least amount of work and gets the best results. So, can't beat that technique. And then, of course, when I'm done with that, I'm going to go ahead and normalize and heat treat the blade. So, yeah. Here I have the piece I'm going to cut my ring pommel out of. You can see I have it dotted. That should be pretty close to the same width as my handle is at the base. Base, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp this in the vise, cut this out, and I'll probably sand it smooth so that way it's uniform. So it's a scrap piece, so it's not perfect. And I dealt with an angle grinder, I can cut it very perfect anyway. So I'm gonna do that. Take the belt sander, just kind of press it down, smooth it out. Drill holes on either side and then make it fit the tang of my sword. Okay, now that I have this sanded down as much as I want it, it's still a little rough, but I'm leaving the whole sword, as you can kind of see, rough. I decided to do that just because it kind of looks cool. I'm going to put a small bevel on the edge to sharpen it so that way it's not just a blunt object like the stereotype of European swords often is, which historically they weren't. That is not true. But anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a hole through here and then probably come over here and drill another hole so that way it fits onto the tang. I'll have to file it out, of course, because the tang's pretty square and, well, drills make round holes. So I'm sure you can figure out how that works out. Okay, so I decided to heat cycle the guard and the pommel, give them a little more texture. What I do is I normally leave it in the put in the forge, heat it up to where it's, critical temperature, glowing since it's just mild steel. Pull it out, let it cool, and stick it back in. I'll do this a couple times, and then the third time I just leave it in, just let the forge cool down. I do a similar thing to normalize the blades, which is probably how it has the same texture. But I decided to do that because it adds texture to this so that way these aren't just plain and smooth and the blade's rough. The handles, of course, I stained and linseed oiled it. This is oak, which I don't think I said before, and ebony wood stain with just a linseed oil seal. So basically all I have left to do is fill this up with epoxy to put over the tang and then hammer out the end of it over the pommel and it'll be done. I forgot to mention I also need to grind the edge and sharpen it, but I probably won't film that because this video I think is already getting a little longer and it's kind of boring. And I do it for every blade I make. It's the same for all of them.